You know, on this channel, I really do try to mix up the stories that I cover. I try to give you some lighter stories, some stories of people being heroic, and hopefully by the time that this video comes out, I will have released a video of a story of somebody, a good guy with a gun, being heroic in the city of Houston. But unfortunately, these bad things that I keep warning you about, these bad policies that lead to awful results, keep getting kept in place. They don't change in a lot of places in this country, and a perfect example of this is the murder of a Cook County Sheriff's deputy, yet another cop killed in and around the Chicago area by somebody who never should have been out of prison in the first place. But of course, he got an early release for good behavior because 5 times being a convicted felon, 2 gun crimes post being a convicted felon that he was convicted of, obviously means that he's an innocent angel Aladdin, and he deserves his 27th chance because, oh my god, it would be a shame in society if we held this guy in prison who would be out there on the streets to try to rob people and murder police officers. And that's what I want to talk about today. But before I get into that, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
It was incredibly quick, Judy. The man charged with Deputy Rafael Wordlaw's murder is a 5-time convicted felon who was only just released from prison on his latest case last year.
So oftentimes on this channel, I praise local news reporting when it is accurate, when it helps me find these cases that I want to elevate on my channel. But to be clear, this is not one of those cases. This is not praiseworthy reporting from the local news, because while it is in fact true that this is a 5-time convicted felon who was released only last year in the year 2023 on his latest conviction for a charge, that nowhere near tells you the whole extent of the story. What we have to find is some supporting information from the written word, because they clarify what is the most crucial part about that 2023 release, and that is, of course, that it never should have happened in the first place. So the suspect, known as Cordarrow Thompson, who according to police is seen on surveillance video participating in the shooting, actually has 5 felonies, as they said, but he has 2 specific gun charges. There's one in 2015, which was a felon in possession of a firearm. Good work, gun control on that. But then there's the 2020 case that they just referenced, where he was convicted and he was sentenced to 8 years in prison as a result of that particular felon in a possession of a gun case. Now, that 2020 charge was unlawful use of a firearm. Again, he was convicted of that in 2021, and he was later sentenced to 8 years in prison, but he was released in 2023 after being given credit for good behavior and his time in custody before his conviction.
It was incredibly quick, Judy. The man charged with Deputy Rafael Wordlaw's murder is a 5-time convicted felon who was only just released from prison on his latest case last year.
Now, obviously, if they would have held him halfway on his sentence, he wouldn't be out of prison until next year, but they decided that he deserved to be released only after 3 years, because isn't he an innocent angel Aladdin? And post that, there were no additional red flags that would have warned you that this guy, who again should have been on probation or actually parole for that early release, would have reoffended. Except, of course, that's not the case. We're talking Cook County here, so he was rearrested and re-released from jail in January of this year. So while he was out 5 years early on a prison sentence, he ended up getting a 3rd weapons charge that has not been adjudicated yet. He was arrested for that 3rd weapons charge, and rather than sending him back to prison to finish out his 8-year bid, they decided to just release him from jail because honestly, he's such a good boy, he has such good behaviors that we had to let him out early in the first place, despite that being his 5th felony conviction, and just because he ended up with the firearm in his hand again after 2 separate felon in possession of firearm convictions, that didn't mean that we needed to hold him at all. I mean, that was all the way back in January. Who would have thought that this guy with a lengthy criminal history that goes back decades would just be somebody who continuously reoffended? Only every single person looking at this objectively, but because we have Kimberly Fox as the district attorney for Cook County, and she doesn't want to prosecute anyone for anything, she just wants to say that the criminal justice system is racist, this guy was out on the streets, and of course, he deprived a good black family who raised a cop's son who acted heroically in this situation so that he could get killed by this criminal who is affected by the systemic systems and the structural racism. And what's insane about this is that Chicago, a place known for their gun control, had this guy arrested multiple times on gun charges post his original felony conviction, says that, oh, well, you know what we need in response to this? We need stricter gun control laws. We need more rules to prevent citizens from owning guns because that's what it's going to take in this scenario in order to prevent this from happening. Quote, obviously we need tougher laws. I agree with that part. And then it says we need tougher gun laws. Snelling said, we need more accountability when it comes to people who are committing acts of violence. Again, I agree with that last part. However, I do want to point out that they had all the gun control that they needed in this particular situation. It is federally illegal for a felon to be in possession of a firearm. They had him convicted on that. He was supposed to serve 8 years. They let him out early anyway. They had an additional warning when he was arrested again, being a felon in a possession of a gun after this pattern of behavior. So no, tougher gun control laws are not going to be the thing that solves this. Enforcing the current laws, actually holding people accountable, holding repeat offenders in jail so that they don't repeat offend while they're out, while you're adjudicating those cases, would actually have solved this.
In court today, a Cook County judge ordered Cordarrow Thompson held pending his trial, saying of his record, it doesn't get any more dangerous than that.
Yeah, well, it's nice to know that the judge this time, after he murdered a police officer in cold blood, ordered him to be held pending trial because his record doesn't get more dangerous. I just want to point out that back in January, they could have done this when he was arrested on another weapons charge while he was out 5 years early on the conviction for the previous weapons charge. They could have said it doesn't get worse than this before that. It's the same record that everybody was looking at when they released him time and time again.
32-year-old Cordarrow Thompson was in handcuffs within 3 hours of taking Cook County Sheriff's Deputy Rafael Wordlaw's life this past Tuesday.
Now look, 3 hours is pretty quick, but the credit for the capture of this individual actually goes to Cook County Sheriff's Deputy Rafael Wordlaw. His last act in trying to stop this person from committing yet another crime was that he fired a single shot that ended up hitting the suspect in the leg, who ended up having to go to the hospital, and that ended up resulting in his arrest. Now, unfortunately, he was greeted with a firearm that was modified to fire automatically with one of those switches, and it had a drum mag with 69 shots in return for the one that he fired. But because of his heroism, because he stood up to this guy who's armed with 2 firearms modified to fire automatically, we end up having a suspect in custody who, by the way, should have already been in custody, but credit to the sheriff's deputy for his actions in this specific situation, because he gave his life to make sure we know who committed this crime, who needed to be locked up, and that is objectively heroic.
Rafael is in heaven right now, and this is happening so quickly for him.
But even as Wordlaw's devastated mother paid tribute to her fallen son and to the fast-moving police work that led to an arrest.
Look, I feel absolutely awful for this woman. She raised a good son. He acted while he was off duty, by the way, not in the uniform. He had his firearm on him. And, you know, it's absolutely tragic that her son ended up losing his life when, by all accounts, he appears to be a decent guy. Also, he was apparently celebrating his 32nd birthday. It was in and around the week of his birthday. So he was out at a gas station, and there's mix-ups in the reports on whether or not he was the one that was the victim of the robbery or he saw one of his friends getting robbed at the gas station and decided to act. But, you know, that will all come out later on when we get some additional reporting and as we move through the trial phase.
Both Police Superintendent Larry Snelling and Cook County Sheriff Tom Darts denounced the brazenness of the crime itself, which resulted in dozens of shots being fired in under a minute.
How in God's name can we have someone firing off 69 rounds at somebody? in a sane society.
Yeah, in a sane society, we shouldn't have a criminal suspect who has been barred from owning a firearm for over a decade, who was recently arrested and convicted for a crime he committed with a firearm, sentenced to 8 years, let out 5 years early, and then was rearrested for possessing a firearm again, and then just got an automatic release or a release with bail or whatever reason, whatever machination of circumstances led to that release, despite the fact that he's clearly and obviously a dangerous individual. This was entirely predictable. This sheriff's deputy is dead because time and time again, our criminal justice system is catered to the criminal. People tell you, oh, well, it would just be so sad for the criminal's family if this guy was held in jail awaiting trial. He needs a 57th chance. Isn't it sad for his family? Just think about the suffering of the perpetrator, the person who repeatedly threatens and attacks people with firearms time and time again, that we have a record of him doing that, because it would be horrible to hold him accountable in any way, shape, or form. And honestly, it might even be a little bit of evil white racism for you to even consider it.
In court today, prosecutors said it was Wordlaw who fired first while sitting in his vehicle at this Woodlawn gas station early Tuesday. Thompson, they say, walked up to a friend who was pumping gas into his own vehicle and displayed 2 weapons. Wordlaw got off only 1 round before Thompson allegedly fired back dozens of times.
So in some of the written reports, it doesn't make it clear that he was protecting his friend in his vehicle that he witnessed getting robbed, and it implies that he is being robbed. But according to this local news report, which is pulling from the prosecutors, it appears that he did try to save another individual. He did try to intervene on their behalf. He was able to fire a shot, but unfortunately he was greeted with a volley of shots in return because this thug, this criminal, Cordarrow, whatever the hell his name is, Thompson, had no regard for human life. And again, that's the person that our system gave every chance. He didn't give this officer a chance at all. 69 shots, he emptied both magazines into this individual because he didn't care about his life. He has no value for human life, and it ended up costing a good man his life.
He fought till the end. He was a hero. He fought protecting his friend.
So here you have the mother saying he fought until the end, he fought protecting his friend, and yes, it is true, and I understand the emotion in there. Although I haven't lost anybody to murder, I can imagine how this woman is feeling, and it's absolutely devastating. I mean, just think about it. When you're the mother of a police officer, when you're the relative of a police officer, you fear the call that your son or daughter was killed in the line of duty. In this particular case, he wasn't in the line of duty. He was off. It was his day off. He was celebrating. He was hanging out with friends. He was just at a gas station. But the criminal does not warn anyone when they attack, when they initiate the attack, and he still acted as an officer heroically in this particular regard.
Investigators say Thompson was shot in the leg, but managed to get into this green Chevy Tahoe and drive away, showing up shortly afterwards at Insight Hospital at 25th and Michigan.
The offender gave false information about his identity. Once officers arrived to conduct an interview, he did not want to speak with the officers, and he then left.
Police say Thompson had a rideshare take him to 18th in Michigan, then hopped into a second one to Northwestern. Officers arrested him within minutes of his arrival at the hospital.
Look, let's be real. This guy was done. If you have a cop-issued firearm, whether you're on duty or off duty, those bullets are made to be identifiable. So him not wanting to talk to the police and all the normal tricks that these gangbangers end up using to avoid accountability weren't going to work in this scenario. But he knew he was in trouble, so in terror, he took an Uber to a location and then another Uber to the other hospital in order to avoid suspicion, but he was eventually arrested at that second hospital.
Now, investigators say that they have not recovered either Thompson's vehicle or his weapons, but they do say they have surveillance video as well as a gunshot residue test and a DNA test that matched blood recovered from the scene.
Now look, while a lot of people might think this is an open and shut case because they use this surveillance video in order to find him, it needs to be made clear that according to the public defender, since they don't have the vehicle, the surveillance video is particularly grainy and they don't have other firearms, the ones that were used by the suspect in this case. It would not be an open and shut case if not for the bullet that was fired by the sheriff's deputy into his leg for 2 reasons. 1, to match the bullet wound, and 2, because the blood from that wound that was left at the scene that could tie his DNA to this particular particular situation. So again, they might not even have a conviction if this guy wasn't able to get off at least one shot in this moment, and that's really sad that this person, again, was this close to skating on this particular case once again, but that's the way Chicago works. That's the way Cook County works, and it's intentional. This is what the district attorney has wrought all over the city, and we're seeing the results right here. And yet again, another family of an innocent is completely ripped apart by circumstances that were entirely preventable, by a person who should have been in lockup, not just because of his 8-year sentence, but because of his post-early release for good behavior arrest on firearm charges again. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about a heroic officer who was killed by a criminal who should have never been on the streets in the first place. Till next time.